Welcome, everyone. We want to talk today for a few minutes about the coming Great Depression in preparation for our webinar, which will be on July 27, 2023 at
2:30 p.m. Eastern.
It'll be a wonderful Thursday. We hope that you join us. In preparation for that, some questions came in that we are looking forward to answering, and we'll be expounding upon these and much more when we get to the 27th of July.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. And Brian's and I want to talk about the Great Depression, certainly, and what's on your mind. But we want to begin with the fact that this Great Depression is not a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
It's not the 1930s. We try to make that really clear as we're out there talking to folks. It is a period where you need to be intensely prepared.
Right. Which is the whole point of us talking about it ever since 2014 when the book came out.
Right.
And we were talking about even before we published the book. The whole point is if you're forewarned, you're forearmed, and you can do something about it, which is what a lot of the questions seem to be oriented toward, right? Is what do we do about this period?
Absolutely. When we started the book, it was really had a business focus and protect your wealth, but this has turned into a protect my family. How do I prepare my family? How do I make sure my business can keep going so that my employees, my team can be taken care of? It's turned into a real people mission, which is really nice. We've really enjoyed to see enjoyed that.
So, do you ever get asked, Alan, why are only you guys, you and your brother, forecasting this, or you and the team at ITR Economics? Why isn't anybody else talking about the 2030s?
There are some other people talking about the 2030s, and that question came in, and it's a often asked question, so I'm sure you get it a lot too.
No.
You don't?
No.
Well, then people feel more open talking to me.
Yeah, I don't.
The reality is, I tell them I know there are other people talking about, but not many, and I don't really know who they are because they're not people that I come into business contact with, except for one, and he comes at it for different reasons than the reasons we are proposing that there will be this Great Depression.
Well, I know one institution is looking at it, and no one's timed it like we have. They're not so specific, but Sloan Kettering School of Management, part of MIT, they're looking at this time period also as one of extreme duress.
And there's actually in this time period, and this is not something we often talk about on stage. Don't think I do it more than once every 10 times, where there's going to be a social aspect to this too. I mean, there's a big demographic change that'll be going on. There's going to be all kinds of political pressures. It's going to be a very interesting time to live.
Yeah, tumultuous.
Tumultuous.
And what I really like talking about when I talk about the Depression is on the other side of the Depression, how the U.S. is so well poised to dominate economically for at least 2 generations after the 2030s.
Oh, agreed. There's all kinds of demographic and economic reasons why that will be the case. The millennials will be ruling, the Zs will be right behind them, helping them, and then the As will be coming along. We don't know much about the As yet. We hope they're a solid demographic. Could we be wrong? I mean, somebody asked that.
Oh, this is economics. Of course we could be wrong. I mean, there's many ways we could be wrong. We could be wrong about the timing. And I think it's very legitimate to ask us if we've altered the timing of our expectations. I mean, and then there's the dynamics. I mean, those both aspects of that forecast were subject to being wrong, which is why we're constantly updating our analysis, asking ourselves those tough questions. But I tell you what, the more I see that national debt climb, and the more I see a Federal Reserve that doesn't really want to rein in that spending, and the more I see a divided government in China falling by the wayside, I don't see how it's not going to happen.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Everything you said, plus the demographics we see in key countries and the problems that are building. So when I'm asked that question on the road, I will answer it with, that's why we keep a close eye on it all the time. Follow ITR so that we can let you know if it's going to happen sooner or later. But there are things to watch for too. We cover those in our book, Prosperity in the Age of Decline. So the answer is yes, we could be wrong to the timing. To the fact of a depression, I suppose there are things that could make it less severe, but we don't think they're going to happen. We could find the things you were talking about, all the debt spending, all of a sudden reversing direction. We could find people meeting in the aisle and singing Kumbaya, and we could find change in modern monetary theory in many countries, not just the United States. And all those things could have a positive impact and lessen the decline. But our cyclical theories almost mandate there is going to be a downturn in that decade. It's a question of severity, and we've done our work. It's going to be severe.
It will be severe, and for people that are our age or a little bit older, the early 1980s was a similar period, but this theoretically should be worse than what we went through in the 1980s. And even the 1980s, ITR was forecasting it, that particular demise. It still caught people by surprise.
Sure.
You'd think that more and more businesses would be able to see these sorts of things coming. But we always hear those words, right? This time,
it will be
different.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And another question that does come in is, isn't this becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy? And my answer is, I suppose if Brian and I had access to millions and millions and millions of people, and all those businesses actually began to prepare accordingly, and there's some way that they could make it worse as they withdraw from the active business environment. But the reality is that's not what's happening, and businesses that we talk to are going to prepare. Those are the ones that are going to win because the others are going to jump off the cliff.
Right. And government isn't going to change because of what we're talking about, or anybody else for that matter.
Although we could run for president in 28.
I can't. I'm busy.
Oh. All right, so we could be wrong.
What about when people ask you, is there going to be a trigger, or what will be the trigger to all this? What do you say?
My answer is it's not the trigger, it's always a plural. There are triggers, and there's no just one thing. It's not that simple, and it's in its complexity. We've already talked about two. It's debt among many nations, modern monetary theory, overspending among many governments, not just the United States, because this will be a global Great Depression. We've run the word demographics out here a couple times already. And the baby boomers of the world are going to be a major contributor to this, and that the cost of keeping us alive and well will be truly staggering as we go forward. And then, thirdly, we're forecasting a decade of second half of this decade with inflation and higher interest rates. So all the mounting debt becomes really expensive to the point where it will be a heavy weight on businesses and on individuals, which will contribute to the pullback in spending that is needed, and that spending is needed to keep the economy going.
It's interesting right now because needing to raise the debt ceiling in Washington, they haven't negotiated for the last 80 days, but now all of a sudden there's a full court press to negotiate. Even Democrats want to cut back on spending. They want to talk about reining in the national debt, as allegedly the Republicans do also. And I was reading that and I was thinking, that's really interesting. There's a trend that if it were real, could help soften the blow, right? But then I realized they always just play games with these things. They say it's going to reduce because they put it further out into the future, or the revenue enhancements aren't really there to cover the spending that they're going to engage in. We've been down this road so many times that for a brief moment, I thought, oh,
they're getting it.
They're getting it.
No.
But then I realized, no, they've played this game before.
And none of that encompasses the unfunded liabilities that are hanging over, the government and other governments. It's so they can reduce the amount of the deficit spend, so that instead of adding $2 trillion, they add $1.6 trillion, and call that a reduction, because that's how Washington works, right? It's not a business reduction. It's just we've reduced how bad it's going to be. So have no hope is what we want to tell you here.
Yeah, I couch it as the Serenity Prayer of economics, right? We can't control that. All we can do is control how we position our businesses and how we help our kids get ready for what's coming, because we're not going to change something like this.
No, we're not.
And I want to get back to the trigger points. Something that I mentioned when I'm asked that question, Alan, is it's impossible to know, because whatever it is, people are going to say, well, that's what caused it. Well, that's just the tipping point. That was the last ounce added to the scale. What caused it is what we're going through right now and the trends that we see right now.